How's it going, y'all? It's Shane with the Social Freedom Tribe. I wanted to do a video real quickly on flow and how flow heals social anxiety. So first of all, it might be best to watch the intro video to where I introduce the three keys of attention, mindsets, and flow. But right now I'm going to dive deeper into the third key, flow. And what is flow? Flow is when we put our attention completely into what is needed for a task. So it might be if you're on stage, then you have part of your attention on your voice, part of your attention on what lines you're supposed to do, part of your attention on the timings of it all, and maybe your other cast characters or anything. Just completely divided between like what it needs to be divided to for the task, and not things that are unneeded for the task, or thoughts like, can I actually do this, or anything that's limiting mindsets. So the reason I'm talking about this and using this as a key to heal social anxiety is because when I've been out into crowds and stuff, what I've noticed is flow is an easy way of taking the chaos out of my mind and just giving it order and giving myself something to just focus on and do, and everything kind of just washes away. However, modern society doesn't really teach us how to get into flow. It actually teaches us how to do pretty much the opposite of flow. So what I mean by that is when we do a task just for the sake of the task itself, and we just really enjoy the task, and we use it to relax and just really get in. Maybe cooking does that for some people. Maybe when they're cooking, they're just completely in that zone of putting the ingredients, tasting them, figuring out combining ingredients in their minds, like what would this taste plus this taste like, the amounts, stuff like that, maybe recipes. They have some way of getting into like a flow state and enjoying this task. Whereas somebody else might do it because they're on a diet and they just need to do it, and they hate cooking, but they're just like stressing themselves out through it to get to some goal or something like that. The second is not actually flow. It's more just doing a task and hating the task. And the mind is still in chaos when we're not in flow and enjoying that task. So what I've often found is that modern society kind of teaches us to do tasks that we just really don't like, that are healthy. I mean, they could be healthy tasks, but we could also just enjoy the task. And modern society kind of just trains us to always focus on the light at the end of the tunnel, or whatever kind of like ping of dopamine we can get from stimulation and just things grabbing our attention rather than us putting our attention out, like television and video games and all these things that are just porn, that are just like grabbing our attention. We're not dividing, we're not putting out our attention and enjoying a task. Something is grabbing our attention, and we're temporarily feeling like some kind of relief during that moment because our attention is grabbed, our mind is not in chaos, stuff like that. And side tangent, and they can once your attention is grabbed, they can add whatever beliefs they want through advertisements and themes of stories and stuff like that, and then it's just kind of just added there. But it's a side tangent. Yeah. What happens is, let's do an example. Let's take somebody that is a drummer, and let's say that during their childhood, they were yelled at all the time, they have a stressful life, maybe in college they were in debt, and just all this stuff happening, and the only form of relief they had was they went to their drums and they just started one rhythm on their right hand, one rhythm on their left, and it was just a moment of relief for them to be able to divide their attention into this task and not have to think about how they're in debt or their mind gets out of chaos and it's just in this order, and it's just like, this is all I have to do right now is just focus on this, and I don't have to think about these other things. I don't have to have these chaotic thoughts. And it's their form of relief. And let's say that person just uses that form of relief every day, just plays drums. And decades later, they're just an insane drummer. Now let's say some other kid sees this insane drummer and sees that they're a rock star and they're surrounded by fans. They're like, oh, I want this because I want the fans and I want the recognition and all that. So they start drumming from this place of, I want recognition, I want money, I want to be a rock star. And they start practicing drums in a way that is stressful. They don't actually enjoy practicing drums. They're doing something that they don't enjoy to get a goal. And what ends up happening is just the thing becomes stressful. It's hard to practice hours and hours and hours when that practice is stressful to the body and the person doesn't enjoy it. It's very different than the drummer that enjoyed the task and just did it for the task itself. But that's like kind of what modern society teaches us. They have us go through school and they have us do study, and when we hate it, and then, oh, if you study you get good grades and you can go into college and make money. It's always looking towards the future and hating the task in front of you. And they don't actually teach you to like, oh, here's how you can have fun with math. Here's how you can have fun with history and all of this, because they just don't know any better. So we end up going through life kind of like not really learning flow, and then all these things pop up where sugary snacks and television and porn and all of these things that are really just there because we don't know how to enjoy our lives without them. So most of us just go into a state of coping, and we're doing these tasks that we hate doing. We hate our work. We hate our diets. We hate going to the gym. We hate practicing whatever in our hobbies. We hate all these things, and what we do is we cope with television, we cope with porn, and we cope with video games. We cope with all these sugary snacks just because it provides us this little dopamine spike where it's just like a bing, and then we spend the rest of our lives chasing those just short dopamine spikes like everywhere we go, and we're always doing tasks that we hate and then looking towards the end of the tunnel. And the reason I want to talk about this with healing social anxiety is it just provides order to the mind when we're in front of people. When we're talking to somebody, we might be nervous with them. Why are we nervous? Because we want something. We aren't enjoying the conversation. We aren't in flow with the conversation. We are doing this. I heard I was supposed to listen. I think I'm supposed to ask this kind of question. Oh, did I say the right thing? These mindsets that don't get us into flow, and we're focusing on just getting something out of it. Oh, I want them to like me. I want them to go on a date with me. I want money from them because I want to sell them on something. And we don't get into a flow, and we don't enjoy that conversation. What ends up happening is our mind is in chaos, and we end up in feeling social anxiety because our mind is just in chaos, and we retreat to somewhere that our mind will be in order in. Or we stay in the overwhelm and just overwhelm ourselves, and we are extremely triggered and just stressed out, and it's not a good time either way, either direction that we go. We can retract and try to stay safe, and that's the only way we can really learn to keep our minds ordered is when we're doing certain things like television and stuff like that, or maybe we do have tasks at home that we do get into flow with, but we don't know how to translate that to a social environment where we're having a conversation with people. That's what this video is about, is just really the point of flow and how it gets us out of social anxiety, and then how do we get that with a conversation? How do we get that in front of people? And really, I would hope that you come up with your own answers. I can give you examples. I know in crowded areas, I really like surfing through the crowd or just going in between them. It's a fun thing, especially when it's a very, very crowded environment, because there's all this movement, and it's so fun to just keep my attention out, and the only task in front of me in that moment, or I'm telling myself I don't need to focus on anything other than just weaving through the crowd, and it's a very enjoyable practice for me, and I feel like a lot in flow, even surrounded by all this chaos and people and all that. Another way is maybe I'm having a conversation and I really like diving into that person's world and coming up with questions that can navigate that person's world, not in a coaching way, not in a way that's like I'm giving advice or I'm, just like leading them to a direction where I want them to have the insight that I know or something like that. It's more like I just really like asking questions that lead to a new place and then just like allowing whatever happens. That's how I get into a flow with just listening to people. 'Cause I can add these questions that the person's like, oh, it's a good question. Maybe somebody's complaining about something and I'm like, what do you think was going on for that person? And then it's just like a new question that's just like, whoa, okay. And I can kind of co-create this thought pattern or this monologue that they're creating into a certain direction, and it's just really fascinating to me, and I'm really enjoying that, and I get into a flow state with it. And I'm constantly just finding ways that I can be in flow, even if I'm not able to talk and something's going on. Maybe I can just dance. Maybe I can like create my own internal music, and just play some kind of beat or something like that. Maybe I can like drum with my hands or something, and just find a way to keep some kind of task going. Just when I'm really in a chaotic state and my mind is drifting. There's other ways. I mean, I like to meditate a lot and put my attention to my body, and I really recommend that. But there's so many ways to just put our mind back into order and get out of this stressful social anxiety. So, it's the third key, flow. It talks about the second key, mindset, and we'll talk about attention. I hope this makes sense, and particularly the hardest part is going from a place of we're always doing 90-day challenges where we don't actually like what we're doing. We're just like in some kind of 90-day challenge where we can tell people where we are on this challenge, and like there's some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and it's like, okay, keep doing this thing I hate, and then maybe something will happen and I can tell people about it, or I can feel good about myself in the future and not right now because I hate this task. And so when like, first of all, and realizing that is kind of silly, just like, realizing there is a way to actually enjoy that task is the first realization. And the second is really like, how do I get from, okay, every task I do is stressful and the only way I can have fun is these dopamine spikes, to more of a flow life and an enjoyable life where every task is just kind of like translated into flow and into enjoyment. I would say I don't really have an easy answer for that. The way I found it is basically I cut out all of these, I take time to just cut out all stressful tasks that I think I have to do in that moment. And I also cut out all coping mechanisms and all sugary snacks and dopamine spike things. I cut it all out and I just stay in boredom. And I just stay in boredom and I keep staying there. And it takes a long time, but within that boredom, when I finally like reset to like getting used to that boredom, I start learning things that are just a bit better than boredom, where I can actually create my own fun, create my own enjoyment with nothing. I can maybe just start creating a wave with my fingers, and that's better than nothing. It's better than the boredom. And I slowly start learning how to just be in flow, how to just create enjoyment. This is just a small step, and then maybe I can actually find other ways, and maybe some kind of insight comes and I start writing, and I start writing in poems, and then the poems turn into lyrics, and then that turns into something else, and I'm just really enjoying this new creation that I'm making. And hours pass by and I realized, well, I've just been in front of this pen and paper for hours and I feel fulfilled and I want to keep going. And it's just way more fulfilling and satiating than getting some kind of dopamine spike or anything. So it's not an easy answer. I've only really found it by just staying in boredom and not allowing myself to do any stressful tasks or stressful or coping mechanisms or anything. I just stay in the boredom and then stuff arises. And it just takes time. I think that it's a skill set like any other of just finding ways to translate any task into something that's fun. Maybe like raking the leaves, you can throw the leaves into the air and just watch them fall and maybe see how high you can throw the leaves or how far you can throw the leaves. Some kind of task where the feedback is clear and what the task is clear, what the challenge is clear, and it gets right exactly. It's not too easy that it's boring, and it's not too hard that it's overwhelming, and it's just a clear, ordered task. And I hope this helps, and I hope you challenge yourself to stay in the boredom and see what arises, see what enjoyment arises. And I love you all. Have a good one. Peace.